Yo, bro. So this dude just walked out of a courtroom after 2 years of his life hanging in the balance. And what happened next? No cap. Nobody saw it coming. Not his lawyers, not the prosecution, not even his own family who were sitting right there in the gallery. We're talking about young Philly. Rapper, YouTuber, UK content creator turned international headline. He just found out his fate after an 11-day trial in Australia. And bro, stay with me because the reaction in that courtroom is the part nobody's talking about yet. I'm gonna walk you through exactly how he got here, what the jury actually decided, and the moment that had the whole courtroom silent. Let's get into it. Okay, so quick rewind for anybody just tuning in. Young Philly, real name Andres Felipe Valencia Barrientos, 30 years old, born in Colombia, raised in Southeast London. This guy built a whole career off YouTube and music, brand deals, TV appearances, the whole ecosystem. Then in September 2024, everything changes. He's doing a gig in Perth, Australia. A 20-year-old fan approaches him at the venue. Long story short, she ends up back at his hotel room with him. What happened in that room became the center of a trial that split the internet in half. He got hit with 10 charges, 6 counts of sexual penetration without consent, 3 counts of assault occasioning bodily harm, and 1 count of strangulation. He pleaded not guilty to every single one. For context, in Australia, they don't need a unanimous jury verdict. They can go with a majority, so this wasn't as simple as everybody thought going in. This trial ran 11 days. Forensic dentists, detectives, bar managers, even Philly himself took the stand, which, bro, that's a massive risk for any defense team. And here's where it gets crazy, because what he said on that stand basically decided this whole case. So Philly gets up there and admits some stuff straight away. He admits he bit her. Breasts, neck, face. He's calling them love bites. Says his mouth was on her skin, his teeth were involved. And in England, they'd just call that a love bite. He admits in some spots he bit harder than others, but he's denying the actual assault claims. Says there was no stop, no complaint, no blood, denies the strangulation entirely. Meanwhile, the prosecution is building a case around consent, arguing that whatever happened at the start of the night doesn't excuse what allegedly happened after. The defense is countering with, hey, this was a fan who idolized this guy. Things escalated, and consent doesn't get renegotiated frame by frame. Now here's the thing, bro. The jury deliberated for 3 whole days. 3 days. That tells you this wasn't clean cut for anybody in that room. And then Friday hits. The verdict comes in. Not guilty on the grape charges. Not guilty on strangulation. The jury actually hung on 3 of the 6 grape counts, meaning they couldn't agree at all. But guilty. Guilty on 2 counts of assault occasioning bodily harm, both tied directly to the biting. So let's sit with that for a second, because this is where it gets messy. He walked out not convicted of what everybody assumed this trial was about, but he didn't walk out clean either. He's now a convicted offender, just not for what half the internet expected.
I think people don't understand that it proved her point. Her point wasn't, oh, he raped me straight away. The point was, it was consensual at first, but then it got too aggressive to a point where she was probably saying stop, where it got bite marks, face, neck, testicles. That at that point, it doesn't matter what happened. Like, if it was consensual beforehand, she's saying stop. No. We learned that in primary school. And he was carrying on and abusing her. That's why he got assault. 2 or 3 cases are so on top. Like, you need to know the difference. You need to listen. The case just got proven. They just didn't know the line. They didn't know which line it was stepping. But it just proved her point.
And bro, the reactions online are exactly what you'd expect. Half the comments are saying justice was served. The evidence wasn't there for the bigger charges. The other half are saying a jury basically confirmed he caused real physical harm, and people are treating that like a win. Both things can be true here, and that's honestly the most uncomfortable part of this whole case. His family, from what's being reported, was relieved. You can imagine, after almost 2 years stuck in a different country, unable to leave, career basically frozen, that relief hits different regardless of what people online think about the outcome. But here's where it gets crazy, and this is the part I told you to wait for. When the verdict was actually read out loud in that courtroom, Philly broke down. Fully wept, in front of everyone. His legal team, the jury, the press, his family. A guy who took the stand looking confident, loud, in control of the narrative the entire trial, just completely lost it emotionally the second those words were read. And bro, that's not the end of it either, because he's not actually free and clear. He's on bail until August, when a sentencing date gets set for the 2 charges he was convicted on. Assault occasioning bodily harm can carry up to 5 years, though because it's a first offense and the nature of it, legal experts are saying it's unlikely to hit anywhere near that max. On top of that, prosecutors still have to decide whether they're going to retry him on those 3 hung charges. So this story, as wild as it already is, might not even be over.
Okay, now as a final year law student, I would love to discuss the young Philly case. Let's delve into this, okay? So despite the fact that he may not be found guilty or liable of rape, he may very much likely be found guilty of ABH. Now, there are some very significant details within this case regarding young Philly biting his victim, to which his victim then was inflicted with wounds, okay? Wounds that penetrated her skin, that in a court of law will possibly be amounted to assault. Now, in a court of law, there's a very thin line as to what the judge deems as acceptable behavior from human beings in regards of consensual activities. Now, the case that the state CPS brought against Brown in 1997 established the ruling of what consensual activities actually are and when they go over the line of what is deemed as lawful and legal. And it was held in the case of Brown that even during sexual intercourse and sexual activity, that consent is not a defense. So even if a woman, even if the victim in this case, in young Philly's case, did give consent for young Philly to harm her, that would not be a defense for young Philly. You cannot consent to being unlawfully harmed. So in this situation, we will more than likely see a guilty verdict for young Philly, if not in the case of rape, then at least in the case of ABH. And there are some very limited exceptions within criminal law that protect specific consensual acts, such as tattooing or certain sports. But anything outside of the tattooing and the sports would not be deemed as consensual harm. Lord Templeman said during this case that it was the court's and the state's duty to ensure that the welfare and the safety of citizens were protected from a cult of violence. At English law, a person cannot generally rely on consent as a defense where they intentionally inflict actual bodily harm upon another human being.
So where does this actually leave young Philly? Not guilty of rape, not guilty of strangulation, guilty of assault. Career hanging by a thread that was already fraying before this trial even started, considering everything else that came out about him during this whole saga. Some people are calling this a win. Some people are calling it accountability. Realistically, bro, it's both. And neither side is going to be fully satisfied with that answer. We'll obviously keep tracking this one, especially once sentencing actually happens and we find out if prosecutors push for that retrial. If you want to stay caught up on this whole case from day one, I've got that covered on the channel. Anyway, this concludes today's video. Be sure to subscribe to LoafTube for future celebrity videos and turn on that post notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Until then, see you in the next one.